Returnal, you shoot a lot, you dash a lot, you see astronauts a lot, and you die a lot, but it's pretty great once you harness its more nuanced gameplay mechanics. This is Alex, and I'm going to blow through 16 important tips in the shortest amount of your time as possible to better your chances of survival in future runs. Tip number 1, your melee attack is the key to taking down larger enemies much easier. Your sword is great at inflicting stagger, which will let you freely blast away at enemies' precious weak bits, and you can tell when they can be staggered again by the dissipating orange bar underneath their health. Tip 2, look around for these tasteful decorative statues that have glowing yellow eyes. If you destroy it, you'll get a little bonus of space money, or if you're a planet native, obolites. Tip 3, if you have unlocked the Dreadbound, you now have my personal favorite weapon in the game. This fires projectiles that fly out and return, but cannot refire until they return. To get the most out of this beast, get as close to your target as you can, which will rapidly increase its firing speed. This also works very well in conjunction with that melee staggering tip from before, allowing you to pretty much point this thing right into enemies' skulls and blast away. The Dreadbound is one of the quickest ways to dispatch some of the most difficult foes, but does have the high risk of having to get right up into their grill to be most effective. Tip number 4, if the enemy types that prime up and focus fire an orange laser at you are giving you a rough time, no need to worry. If you simply shoot the target once, that will cancel their charge, making groups of these enemies a little easier to deal with. Tip number 5 is more of a personal suggestion, but I really recommend remapping dash to the right bumper to be able to dash and fire without removing your thumb from the analog stick. This game requires razor precise timing, and you'll thank me later for swapping these if you do. Tip 6, in the first area of the game, at any time, you can go back into your ship to sleep in your bed. This will restore some of your health, and you can leave and re-enter the ship to do this until your health is back to full. Tip 7, once you unlock the Electropylon driver, cool name, it's easy to be using it somewhat wrong. This can create area of effect DPS traps that can be stringed together to cover a wide area. You can also shoot one of these into multiple enemies to create a damaging electrical charge between them, hurting those who might pass by. A somewhat difficult gun to use in the heat of the moment, but solid if you know how to use it right. Tip number 8, the halfway point, no checkpoints sorry. When exploring, you'll find tons of green integrity healing items laying around, but if you consume these when you're at max health, they will turn into resin. One of these will give you 1 or 2 ticks towards expanding your health bar, which is vital for surviving in the late game. Tip 9, when you see these glowing orange octopus things, quickly focus your fire on taking them down first. These will quickly run away and escape, crystal lizard style, and will provide some obolites once killed. Tip number 10, in the early game, there are some areas you can't quite reach yet, but in some cases, you can use the grasp of these tentacle dudes to pull you upwards. Simply dash off before you get chomped, and you might just find an extra cookie hidden up there. Tip 11, once you're fairly familiar with the game and its upgrade systems, I recommend switching the risky interaction input to press instead of hold. There are some tricky to navigate areas that will have an item awaiting you, and you really don't want to be standing still holding down a button when death is quickly closing in. Tip number 12, when you see these crumbly walls, just destroy it to access a secret little area. This usually has an item and a data cube, which must be taken to a data cube processor like the one right after the first boss fight. Tip 13, always take the time to destroy the breakable plants since they often have items or obolites inside. You can shoot these, melee these, or just run straight through them. Tip 14, this is another one of those personal suggestions, but I recommend changing the crosshair scale to large with either a default or medium weight. The timing-based reload mechanic is a big deal in Returnal, especially when you have items that synergize with it, and in the heat of battle, it can be pretty easy to miss those reloads. This change will simply make it much larger, easier to see, and easier to time. Tip 15, although passively taught in the intro of the game, remember to look out for triangular buttons hidden near these gates. Unlike what I'm doing here, consider saving chest opening until you have your weapon proficiency as high as you can get it so that you get better drops when popping those chests. Tip 16, something that I don't see mentioned very often is the real progression in between runs that is making you a tiny bit stronger each attempt. Each weapon has its own trait progression system with different abilities that can appear on the guns. Each of these individual upgrades also have a leveling system of their own, which is making your overall damage potential better the more time you spend killing things in the game. If you're struggling early on, try seeking out the weapon type you like the best and focus on leveling up its traits as soon as possible for a little bit more DPS. And that concludes all 16 of the tips I had for you today, and if you like my more concise, straight to the point style of videos that aim to make you actually better at games, consider sticking around on the channel. As always, this has been Alex from Boomstick Gaming. Thanks for watching this all the way to the very end. You have a healthy attention span, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.